For years, the public repeated the same safe sentence whenever the topic of Kandi Burruss and Todd Tucker came up. They just grew apart. Two ambitious people, two demanding careers, different directions. No villain, no mess, just time doing what time does. That was the story people accepted because it was clean, it was comfortable, and most importantly, it didn't force anyone to look deeper. But the truth, according to Riley Burruss, was never clean, it wasn't quiet, and it definitely wasn't simple. What looked like distance from the outside was actually damage being managed behind closed doors, slowly, deliberately, and in silence. The marriage didn't collapse in one dramatic moment, it eroded, and erosion doesn't announce itself. It happens while everyone is distracted, while routines continue, while smiles still show up on camera. That's why when Riley finally spoke, it didn't feel like a scandal. It felt like an autopsy. Not emotional, not explosive, just precise. She didn't sound angry, she sounded finished. And that distinction matters, because anger wants reaction, but being finished means there's nothing left to protect. Riley didn't frame this as a love story gone wrong, she framed it as a system that stopped working for the people trapped inside it. According to her, this divorce wasn't about infidelity or finances or fame pulling two people apart. It was about control. Control disguised as discipline, structure disguised as values, and authority disguised as concern. Two adults living in the same home but operating from fundamentally different philosophies, raising children under competing rules, expectations, and emotional climates. One side teaching comfort and protection, the other teaching toughness and survival. And in the middle of those philosophies were children forced to adapt, not to life, but to tension. What Riley describes is not a loud household filled with chaos, it was quiet, calculated, and cold in ways that don't leave visible marks but linger much longer. She claims that Todd Tucker wasn't emotionally absent in a careless way, he was emotionally selective. Affection was not missing, it was rationed. Approval wasn't earned naturally, it was negotiated. And over time, that created an environment where love didn't feel unconditional. It felt earned, withdrawn, and redistributed based on behavior, obedience, and alignment. Riley says discipline inside that house often felt less like guidance and more like pressure. Life lessons weren't moments of teaching, they were moments of judgment. Every disagreement became a character flaw. Every emotional response was labeled dramatic. Every attempt to assert a boundary was reframed as attitude. And slowly, the children stopped being nurtured as individuals and started being evaluated like outcomes, measured, compared, categorized. What hurt Riley the most, according to her, wasn't criticism alone, it was labeling. Being described as spoiled, as soft, as someone who wouldn't survive without her mother. Those words, she says, didn't just exist in arguments, they lived in conversations she wasn't present for, in decisions already made, in assumptions that followed her into every room. And while she carried those labels, she says Kayla carried pressure. Kayla had expectations, rules, and performance standards. Riley had walls. And within that imbalance, rivalry wasn't created out of jealousy, but out of survival. Riley claims that over time, both daughters developed beliefs about favoritism. Kayla believed Riley was favored by Kandi, Riley believed Kayla was protected by Todd, and once those beliefs hardened, communication didn't just slow down, it stopped. Family dinners became tense performances, holidays felt obligatory, trips turned transactional, smiles were automatic, trust was not. No one was yelling, but everyone was bracing. And when a family reaches that stage, the damage has already been done. It just hasn't been named yet. The moment Riley says changed everything wasn't a fight, it wasn't an argument, it was a gift. The car. What the internet celebrated as generosity, Riley experienced as confirmation. According to her, the Porsche wasn't just a present, it symbolized something much deeper. That value inside that household came from one direction, and that direction wasn't neutral. That night, Riley says, the house didn't feel like a home reacting to joy, it felt like a courtroom responding to evidence. Accusations surfaced, tones shifted, silence filled the space, not as peace, but as politics. Then came the sentence Riley says never left her. This is why your daughter is impossible. Not screamed, not dramatized, just delivered. And words spoken calmly often do the most damage because they aren't meant to be debated, they're meant to land. When Kayla allegedly followed online with a statement about stepkids never becoming real family, Riley says something permanently broke. From that moment forward, the family wasn't a family. It was a structure waiting to collapse. And collapse didn't come loudly, it came as distance. Todd didn't walk out in one dramatic exit. According to Riley, he faded. By mid-2025, he wasn't living in one place. He was managing two worlds, Atlanta, New York. Presence was replaced by excuses, texts shortened, calls delayed, engagement minimized. And then something subtle but telling happened. Kandi removed Todd's surname from her life online. No announcement, no explanation, just absence. According to those close to the situation, that wasn't branding, that was preparation.
By the time the public divorce became official, Riley says the emotional separation was already ancient. People were reacting to paperwork. The household had already moved on. But what shocked Riley more than the separation itself was what followed: celebration. She claims Kayla didn't mourn the end of the marriage, she marked it. A party, smiles, videos, and a message Riley says she was never meant to see. Finally, he's free. That sentence, she says, didn't hurt because it was cruel. It hurt because it clarified everything. This wasn't just conflict, it was positioning. This wasn't tension, it was strategy. And according to Riley, that strategy didn't begin with the divorce. It had been forming long before. Riley describes the parenting divide between Kandi and Todd as structural, not emotional. Todd thought in outcomes, Kandi thought in impact. Todd measured success through self-sufficiency, Kandi measured it through resilience. He believed money should never be relied on, she believed support didn't weaken character. Neither philosophy was evil on its own, but together they were incompatible. And instead of softening over time, they hardened. Empathy became misplaced, decisions were debated, feelings were dismissed, and eventually disagreements stopped being about issues and became about allegiance. You weren't disagreeing anymore, you were choosing sides. And once sides exist in a family, unity is already gone. As the marriage fractured, Riley alleges the businesses felt it too, not collapsing but slowing. Old Lady Gang, Blaze Steak, trucking ventures. Energy drained, conversations cooled, deals paused. Then came the prenup. According to Riley, that document didn't just divide assets, it revealed intention. Todd's position was limited, Kandi's protection was precise, and fans began asking a question no one wanted to voice. Was this marriage ever a partnership, or was it always a contract with conditions? After Todd stepped away from the household, Riley says the illusion didn't shatter, it evaporated. Phones stopped ringing, texts went unanswered, support became selective, information became currency, trust became optional. And Riley realized something unsettling. Some people weren't reacting like a marriage had ended, they were reacting like a transaction had failed. Conversations shifted away from emotion and toward assets, divisions, and positioning. This wasn't personal anymore, it was procedural. Online, people noticed changes too. Photos disappeared, names vanished, birthdays were acknowledged without familiar faces, and speculation grew, not about love, but about leverage. Riley didn't correct the rumors. She says she was exhausted by narrative management. For years, she watched the family story be edited, softened, and packaged. Now, she no longer cared to adjust perception. If people were going to talk, they might as well talk honestly. Then Riley said a line that shifted everything. Watch who stays quiet. They're the ones with the most to lose. She never named names. She didn't have to. Implication did the work, and implication is where the internet thrives. Timelines were rebuilt, appearances were tracked, absences were noted, and a new theory emerged. This divorce wasn't unfolding randomly, it was unfolding deliberately. When Riley later added, "One day I'll tell the part I'm not ready to say yet," the tone changed completely. That wasn't a tease, it was a boundary. It signaled that the story had stopped early, not ended. And when someone pauses a confession mid-thought, it's rarely because they ran out of truth, it's because they ran into consequence. What Riley ultimately exposed wasn't a villain, it was a mechanism, a system that doesn't scream, it reorganizes, it phases out influence, it redistributes power quietly. And that's what made the story unsettling. This wasn't heartbreak, it was re-engineering, and when systems finish, they don't collapse loudly, they disappear cleanly. By the end, the question wasn't whether the marriage failed, it was whether it ever existed in the way the public believed, because what followed didn't look like grief, it looked like repositioning. Silence was strategic, statements were cautious, and people who once looked inseparable now orbited each other like strangers protecting a shared past they refused to touch. Riley didn't accuse, she remembered, and memory, when spoken aloud, destabilizes carefully maintained illusions. Her truth didn't bring closure, it brought clarity, and clarity doesn't comfort, it confronts.
However, the silence around their separation wasn't peaceful, it was intentional, and when silence holds that much weight, it's usually because the truth underneath it is heavy. That truth didn't come from press releases or carefully managed interviews. It didn't come from damage control statements or vague explanations. It came from Riley Burruss, the one person who lived inside the structure, not beside it. And when Riley spoke, she didn't sound angry, she sounded finished, which is far more dangerous. According to Riley, this divorce wasn't about money, it wasn't about fame, it wasn't even about love in the way people usually define it. It was about control, about power, about two adults sharing a roof but operating under completely different philosophies of life, parenting, and authority. One side prioritized comfort and emotional safety, the other prioritized endurance and toughness. One believed in nurturing, the other believed in pressure. And when those two worldviews collide inside a household, the damage doesn't show up immediately, it simmers. It embeds itself into routines, conversations, and expectations until it becomes normal. From the outside, the Burruss-Tucker household looked polished, structured, successful. But Riley describes a home where structure wasn't neutral, it was a mechanism. Discipline wasn't guidance, it was leverage. Leadership wasn't protection, it was power. Todd Tucker, according to Riley, wasn't emotionally absent by accident. He was emotionally selective. Not explosive, not violent, just cold in a way that leaves no bruises but plenty of scars. Affection wasn't missing, it was rationed. Approval wasn't denied, it was conditional. Every disagreement became a lesson. Every emotion became something to correct. And over time, the kids stopped feeling like children and started feeling like measurements. Riley says Todd didn't parent like a father, he parented like a CEO. Love came with expectations, support came with outcomes, compliments were replaced with critiques, and the most painful part wasn't even the discipline, it was the labeling, being called soft, spoiled, too dependent, words that followed her into rooms she didn't even speak in. Decisions were made without her presence, but with her name attached. Assumptions hardened into identity, and once that happens, you stop being seen, you start being categorized. Inside that environment, favoritism didn't look like favoritism on the surface. It looked like fairness, like logic, like consistency. But Riley says fairness was replaced with positioning. Kayla had rules, Riley had walls. Kayla had pressure, Riley had distance. And in that imbalance, something dangerous formed. Not jealousy, survival. Two sisters learning very early that the same household did not operate by the same rules for everyone. Riley believed Kayla was shielded by Todd. Kayla believed Riley was favored by Kandi. And once those beliefs set in, silence filled the gaps where communication should have lived. Family dinners became tense but polite. Holidays became performances. Trips felt transactional. Smiles were automatic. Trust was absent. No one fought loudly anymore because fighting would require honesty. Instead, things hardened, conversations shortened, assumptions replaced clarity, and slowly, without anyone naming it, sides formed, not through arguments but through alignment. And once sides form inside a family, the family itself stops existing. What remains is territory.
Then came the moment Riley says shattered what little illusion was left, the gift the internet celebrated, the Porsche. Online, it was framed as generosity, love, luxury, but Riley says inside the house, it felt like a verdict, a declaration of where power flowed from and who controlled value. That night didn't feel celebratory, it felt judicial. Accusations replaced conversation, tones shifted, silence became weaponized, and when the words, "This is why your daughter is impossible," were spoken, they didn't bounce around the room, they lodged themselves deep, not as an insult, but as a justification. When Kayla later posted online, "Stuck kids never become real family," something inside Riley broke, not outwardly, inwardly. That was the moment she says the household stopped feeling like a family at all. It didn't explode, it drained, and that distinction matters. Explosions bring clarity, drainage brings confusion. Todd Tucker didn't storm out, he disappeared. By mid-2025, Riley says he wasn't anchored anywhere, splitting time between cities, between obligations, between versions of himself. Texts became shorter, calls became delayed, gifts replaced presents, and then quietly, Kandi removed Todd's surname from her digital identity. No announcement, no explanation, just absence. Insiders say that move wasn't branding, it was preparation. By then, staying together wasn't about love, it was about surviving what staying had become. The final blow, according to Riley, wasn't paperwork, it was departure. Todd didn't leave Kandi, he left the household. And when Kandi tried to stop him, his response wasn't emotional, it was final. "I'm done pretending." That sentence marked the end, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. Riley noticed a shift in her mother afterward, not rage, not devastation, relief. And what happened next shocked her more than the separation itself. Kayla didn't mourn, she celebrated. Parties, smiles, videos, and a message Riley says she was never meant to see. Finally, he's free. That line reframed everything. This wasn't just conflict, it was positioning, not tension, strategy. And according to Riley, it wasn't new, it was inherited. As the marriage cracked, the empire followed. Not collapsing, but slowing. Businesses sputtered, conversations cooled, energy drained, deals paused. And then came whispers about the prenup. Riley says that document didn't just divide assets, it exposed intentions. Todd's position was limited, Kandi's protections were precise, and fans began asking a question that made people uncomfortable. Was this marriage ever a partnership, or was it a contract with a defined end? And if Todd realized he was operating without real authority, was leaving easier than staying powerless? Riley doesn't answer directly. She doesn't accuse, she implies. And implication is often louder than accusation. Silence, she says, has always been the loudest thing in that house. After Todd stepped away, the illusion didn't shatter, it evaporated. Phones stopped ringing, texts went unanswered, conversations shrank from hours to sentences. What once felt like background noise became deafening. And Riley realized something painful. People weren't reacting to a marriage ending, they were reacting to a failed transaction. Support became selective, information became currency, loyalty became optional. Riley noticed people around Todd behaving differently, less warmth, more calculation, and that's when it hit her. The family wasn't just affected, it was assessed. Analysts online noticed the same. Projects slowed, partnerships vanished, timelines shifted. Fans asked if it was coincidence or consequence. Riley simply said, "Watch who stays quiet. They have the most to lose." She hinted that conversations with outside parties were happening long before the house cracked. Not affairs, not scandals. Narrative control, influence, positioning. She didn't name names, she didn't need to. The internet filled the gaps. Timelines were lined up, patterns emerged. This divorce wasn't chaotic, it was intentional. And Riley's silence during it wasn't protection, it was restraint. Then she dropped a line that changed everything. "We weren't breaking down, we were being phased out." That sentence didn't trend because it didn't entertain, it unsettled. Broken things can be fixed, phased out things are replaced,
And that leaves one chilling question. If this wasn't disorder, whose order was it? By the time the public caught up, the ending had already hardened. Not explosive, solidified. Riley stopped explaining, not because she had nothing to say, but because she had said enough. She wasn't emotional, she was documenting, and documentation isn't for comfort, it's for record. She exposed not a villain, but a mechanism, one that doesn't scream, it reorganizes, and systems don't collapse loudly, they disappear cleanly. This wasn't just about a marriage failing, it was about control normalized, silence weaponized, and survival mistaken for strength. Riley didn't beg for sympathy, she didn't plead to be believed, she left breadcrumbs, maps, patterns. And now the audience isn't asking who caused the divorce, they're asking who benefited, who adapted, who advanced, and who vanished. Because truth doesn't always arrive loudly, sometimes it dissolves, and what Riley Burruss left behind wasn't an ending, it was a warning. Families don't always fracture from betrayal, sometimes they break from control, silence, and survival, and the most dangerous secrets aren't hidden, they're normalized. This story isn't finished, it's paused, and what happens next won't be announced, it will be noticed, in who disappears, in who advances, in what survives quietly and what doesn't. Because the loudest endings don't arrive with noise, they arrive with absence. And if Riley speaks again, it won't be to explain, it will be to confirm. So don't just listen to what's being said, watch what's being avoided. Because silence doesn't always mean innocence. Sometimes it means the design worked.